Everyone thought they were just troubled twins sent to a karate class for discipline. No one knew they had blood on their hands, secrets in their eyes, and a storm beneath their silence. The faded red letters above the door read, East Hills Dojo, Discipline, Honor, Strength. She wore a pressed blazer like armor, but her eyes were tired. Between her and the glass entrance, the twins stood still and moving, wordless. 12 years old, jet black braids tied back neatly, skin like polished obsidian, faces unreadable. Zora and Zion. Inside, the mat smelled of sweat and pine disinfectant, and the air held the dull hum of fluorescent lights. The day they were threatened ... was the day their real story began. The martial arts studio was nothing special, just another forgotten space tucked between a shuttered laundromat and a vape shop in a North Carolina strip mall. But structure might help. Focus. Something to keep their minds busy. She didn't mention the newspaper article buried on page 6, or the quiet calls she'd received at night from a block number. Most importantly, she didn't mention the blood. Camille just wanted to be an aunt-again guardian, not investigator. Camille Brooks stood at the front counter, signing paperwork with tight hands. They've never done anything like this before, Camille said softly to the woman behind the counter. She didn't mention what happened in Raleigh. Zora's eyes wandered across the room, settling on a punching bag swaying from some long-forgotten kick. Zion watched her sister instead. A bell rang from the training floor. Shihan Marcus entered early 40s, tall, his stance disciplined but worn. He had seen dozens of children walk into this dojo. Nervous ones, angry ones, entitled ones, but these two. They were something else entirely. Welcome, he said, walking over. Which one of you is Zora? She raised her hand slowly, and Zion. A nod. Silent. Camille managed a weak smile. They're not much for words these days, but they'll show respect. They've been through some things, like fighters before a match, not students on their first day. Marcus studied them, nothing obvious, no bruises, no ticks. But their eyes didn't flicker like most kids. They were controlled, focused. You ever done karate before? He asked. No, Zora answered. Her voice was even. Zion's gaze was like glass. She said nothing. Beginners, you in every stripe here. All right, Marcus said, clapping once. You'll start as white belts. He meant it as encouragement. Zora blinked slowly. We don't mind earning things, she said. We just don't like being watched while we do. The twins stepped onto the mat in their crisp white uniforms, sleeves slightly too long, belts tied tight with quiet precision. Their bare feet moved soundlessly across the foam tiles, like dancers ghosting across a stage. She reached into her purse, hesitated, then tucked a folded newspaper clipping deeper beneath her wallet. Zora adjusted her stance. Zion mirrored her. In the reflection, they looked more like statues than children, motionless, twin shadows against the fading warmth. Behind them, the other students laughed and whispered, their parents chatting with phones in hand, oblivious. Some sloppy, some eager. Zora and Zion moved simultaneously, clean, sharp, to precise for first-timers. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting amber light across the mirrored walls. In the office, Camille watched through the glass, arms folded tightly. A flicker of something, regret, doubt, passed over her face. Marcus called out instructions to the class. Left foot back, guard up. The students shuffled into position. Marcus frowned. Good, now, jab cross. 1, 2, snap. The girls struck the air with force that drew heads. A brown belt? Malcolm muttered to a friend, creepy twins. They're too good, his friend snickered. Bet they watch fight videos all day. Camille leaned closer to Marcus at the end of class. How'd they do? He hesitated. They're unusually disciplined for beginners. Is there something I should know? Camille stiffened. No, she said. They just listen better than most. Zion looked up then, directly at Marcus. He watched the girls again, frame by frame, their precision, The way they moved before he even gave the command, "We don't need to be watched. We already know what to do." Later that night, Marcus reviewed the class footage routine policy for all new students. Then he paused. In one frame, as the class relaxed, Zora had glanced at the camera, not just locked eyes with it, and for a brief second, she smiled. Zora didn't flinch when the board cracked, the others did. Shihan Marcus had made board breaking optional for beginners. But Zora stepped up before anyone asked, nodded once, and raised her hand high. The wood snapped cleanly under her heel. One strike, fluid. No hesitation. Zion followed silently, mimicking the move. Her board split down the middle, a jagged edge fluttering to the floor like a dry leaf. The other kids clapped awkward, unsure. Malcolm didn't clap at all. Next in line for black. At 15, he towered over the younger kids and thrived on small power plays. Teaching them, correcting them, laughing when they got things wrong. He'd been at East Hills for 4 years, a brown belt, but the twins. They got nothing wrong. At first, he joked about it. Must be twins with YouTube Premium. Then, it wasn't funny. When Zion blocked one of his jabs during sparring and swept his leg without instruction, he laughed, forced and brittle. "Chill, kid, you're not a ninja." Zion didn't respond. She just reset her stance, waiting, and when he accidentally let his foot connect with Zora's ribs during drills just hard enough to leave a mark, she didn't flinch. She didn't even lose rhythm. That night, he found her standing outside the dojo, alone. "You think you're special?" he asked, voice low. She turned to him, dead-eyed. "No," she said. "You think we are?" He stared, something tightening in his chest. Something primal. Fear. Zora and Zion moved in perfect silence, like mirrored ghosts. The dojo smelled of sweat and scorched pine from the broken boards. Red mats lined the floor like dried blood. Marcus watched from behind the desk, brows drawn. To precise, the way Zion's posture never slipped, never relaxed. It wasn't beginner's luck. It wasn't even talent. He couldn't stop replaying the way Zora's kick had landed. It was training, old, familiar, deliberate, and something else, rage, hidden deep beneath their blank expressions. He made a note in their file, then deleted it. Camille watched them stretch in the corner. She said nothing, but her jaw was locked tight, hands shaking as she folded the Raleigh newspaper clipping once more. Malcolm slammed his locker shut. "They don't talk. They don't smile. And they don't make mistakes. That's not normal." His friend, Corey, shrugged. "Maybe they're just intense." Malcolm's eyes narrowed. "No, I think they're playing us." Meanwhile, Marcus confronted Camille in private. "I need to ask you something," he said. "Off the record." She looked up, wary. "Have they trained before? With someone else? Somewhere else?" Camille inhaled slowly. "Not in a dojo." Marcus hesitated. "But they've fought before." Her voice was flat. "Yes, who taught them?" She didn't answer, just handed him a photo folded, worn. It showed two girls, younger, bruised but standing. Behind them, a man's shadow on a gym wall. The face was torn off. That night, Malcolm posted a video to the dojo group chat, a blurry clip of Zion sparring. Caption: "Creepy freaks don't blink." The next day, his locker was open, all his sparring pads gone. In their place, one of the broken boards, snapped in half. Then sliced again, perfectly, like it had been cut by a blade. The hallway outside the dojo locker room was dimly lit, humming with the same flickering overhead light that had gone ignored for weeks. The East Hills dojo had once been proud, but now it bore the weight of time-peeling paint, scuffed mats, and a fridge that made strange noises in the office corner. Malcolm walked through the corridor late, earbuds in, hoodie pulled low. Class had ended over an hour ago. He had stayed to train, or maybe to lurk. He wouldn't admit the difference even to himself. His locker was already ajar. He frowned. Nobody was supposed to be here. The metal creaked as he pulled it wider. Inside, his gear was gone, all of it. Gloves, wraps, his brown belt. Instead, there was a single wooden board, cut into 6 even slices, not broken, sliced, silent, but not still. Malcolm stepped back instinctively, heart ticking faster. Behind him, the hallway remained empty. He spun, nothing, but the cold whisper that followed crawled straight into his ear. Don't blink. Marcus found himself watching them more than teaching them. He dropped his phone. He saw no one. The next morning, Marcus arrived early. He found the dojo door unlocked. Inside, nothing was stolen, but on the whiteboard in the main training area, someone had written in black marker, ***, you made us show you. Now we'll wait. No signature, no trace, just that. By the time Camille arrived to drop off the girls, Marcus had already erased it. Zora and Zion entered without a word, bags over their shoulders. They moved with the same stillness, the same eerie coordination. He remembered Camille's flat voice, ***, not in a dojo. Whatever they had done, whatever they had seen, they had learned. He began pulling student files later that day. Nothing flagged, no incident reports, but the way they moved. It wasn't about sport, it was about control. Malcolm didn't show up for 2 days. He wouldn't look at Zora or Zion, but when they passed him, his body flinched. When he returned, he was subdued, bruise on his temple. Said he fell. Nobody believed him. He wouldn't speak to Marcus. Camille noticed. You all right, Malcolm? He stared at her like she'd asked if the sky was real. But inside, the temperature remained a quiet, deliberate chill. On Thursdays, the dojo smelled of bleach and floor wax. Behind her, Zion held her stance. Their breathing was since steady, controlled. Camille always noticed. It reminded her of hospitals. Malcolm sat alone, headphones in, but no music playing. His gear was neatly stacked again, untouched. But he wouldn't put it on. They never blink, he whispered. The dojo floor was slick with cleaner, reflecting the dull light from above. Mirrors lined one wall, slightly warped from age. Zora stood at the center mat, 1 foot forward, knuckles loose, eyes narrowed. Zion doesn't even speak unless spoken to. Maybe ask that boy what he's hiding. Outside, the wind swept red leaves against the door. Fall had arrived in the mountains. Something's happening with your nieces, and with Malcolm, so she could show me what she was. In the locker room, the overhead bulb buzzed faintly. In the reflection of the mirror near the showers, a flash of dark braid moved past. He turned. No one was there. Marcus, Camille, I need you to level with me. Camille tight. They haven't done anything wrong. Marcus, that's not what I asked. Camille, they defended themselves. That boy has been antagonizing them. Marcus, and the slice board. That just appeared. Camille, Zora doesn't carry a knife. Marcus, he's terrified of them. Camille, he should be afraid of what he doesn't understand. We all should. Malcolm quiet, shaken. They're not normal. I hit her, not hard, just a test. She didn't move. Just stared, and smiled. Marcus, you hit Zora? Malcolm, she wanted me too. Marcus, and what is she? Malcolm, something that docenti need a black belt to know it could end you. Zora alone with Zion. He thought we were toys. Zion, nods Zora. Let them keep watching. They'll see what happens to people who watch. Camille hadn't opened the manila folder in over 5 years. The top page bore a photo. 2 girls, no older than 6, sitting on opposite ends of a cot in a windowless room. Zora stared at the lens. Zion stared at Zora. But tonight, it sat open on her kitchen counter, edges curled with time, ink faded. Intake file, patient Z. Back then, she was a social worker, and they were wards of the state. The case had fallen into her lap after 3 different county workers quit in 1 month. It was something about emotional fatigue. The girls had been found living alone in a condemned house in North Carolina, parents long gone, no clear history. The twins don't speak much, the old case note said. But they listen. Camille remembered the first visit vividly, that they made her feel watched even when her back was turned. Zora had drawn something on the wall in charcoal, a spiral of eyes. Zion had mimicked her movements in the opposite corner of the room, like a mirror. It wasn't just eerie, it was calculated. She never filed a formal report. She didn't know how. What could she say? She sipped her tea, staring at the photo. She gave nothing. Her eyes were tired. The girls had changed since then, but some things had not. At the dojo, Marcus was seeing it too? Breathing sync manipulation with aggressive child led to collapse. No physical contact. Investigation dropped. Zora and Zion's synchronized stances had turned fluid, then predatory. They no longer struck with practice. They struck with purpose. Zora had reacted to a kata movement before the black belt instructor demonstrated it. Zion had reacted in time with her. He tried talking to Camille again. He started reviewing old footage from their first week at the dojo. In the third session, he noticed something off. How? And then, that night, his office door creaked open. A yellow envelope slid under it. Inside, a single printout. An incident report from 2018. Subject, Zion. He blinked. Breathing manipulation. What the hell had Camille brought into his dojo? Rain pattered softly on Camille's window. She sat in silence, the overhead bulb dimmed to a yellow halo. Beside her, Zion lay curled on the couch, asleep, headphones in. But Camille knew she wasn't asleep. Not fully. Across the hall, Zora sat at her desk, notebook open, but she wasn't writing. She stared ahead, brows relaxed, breathing slow. It was the kind of calm that preceded storms. Marcus sat in his office, the printout shaking in his fingers. Outside, lightning cracked, the dojo's shadows warped as if alive. In the locker room, the mirror by the sinks fogged. Though no one was inside, a finger traced the words, "Justice is breathless." The letters disappeared a second later. Camille on phone. "Lo, why did you send me the Zion report?" Voice man. Distant. "Because they're not just kids anymore. You know that, Camille. I buried this for a reason." Voice. "And now it's digging itself out." Camille. "If anyone finds out what happened at our IDGEV double quotes voice, they'll blame you." Marcus to Camille. "You were their guardian. You saw the report. Why didn't you warn me?" Camille. "Would you have believed me?" Marcus. "Maybe not, but I would have watched them closer. Not just let them train with anyone." Camille. "They don't train. They remember." Marcus. "Remember what?" Camille. "Pause how they survived." Zora to Zion, whispering, "They want to open the box again." Zion. "Soft, then we show them what's still inside." Camille burned the folder in her backyard that night. But before the fire reached the last page, she froze. There, drawn in crayon by Zora herself, was a figure tall, hollow-eyed, and surrounded by smaller, blank silhouettes. Underneath, in block letters, "They teach us fear, but we remember the silence." Marcus had inherited it from his father, who inherited it from a man called Shihan Kale, an immigrant from Okinawa with a philosophy as sharp as the swords he never displayed. The black belts that lined the honor wall bore names, dates, and secrets. Marcus had never questioned the gaps. Camille stared into the flames. And in the silence, she swore she heard the echo of breathing not her own. The dojo had stood in East Hills for 3 generations, until now. Camille hadn't returned his calls in days. She was keeping her distance and the girls. But Zora and Zion still came to class, always early, always last to leave. Flipping through the 1996 ledger, a name jumped out. Marcus began digging. He pulled down the archived registry books from the dojo's back closet. Dust clung to the bindings. Kale S. Expelled. Reason: non-compliance with moral code. No ref. No audience. Just a rumor that one of the fighters never got up again. One, unmistakably a young Malcolm, the other Zion, but older, hardened, expression unreadable. Marcus frowned. Kel's own son had been expelled. No further notes. He followed the trail online. What he found was scattered mentions of underground tournaments, unsanctioned full-contact bouts, and a final match that ended in silence. And a photo. To boys, he stared at the photo for hours, trying to understand. The kind that whispers, "I could have broken you, but I chose not to?" That night, the dojo's door was left unlocked again. In the morning, a fresh black belt hung in the locker room. Not new, old, frayed, with a patch that none of Marcus's students had ever worn. She stepped onto the mat without bowing. A silence stretched between them. There was no stopping Zora when she had made a decision. A spiral of eyes. Camille watched from her window as Zora walked alone to the dojo the next day. Zion had stayed behind. She had grown quiet lately. Still, Camille let her go, but something in her stomach turned. The air held a tension, as if the walls themselves knew something had shifted. The mirrors reflected ghost images, blurs where Zora had just been, smudges where Marcus's feet dragged after each blocked strike. The names engraved into the wooden plaques seemed to shimmer. One, newly added, bore no name, just the spiral symbol. Inside the dojo, Marcus waited. Not as a teacher, but as something else. Zora could feel it. Rain threatened, but never fell. Camille stood on her porch, arms crossed, heart pounding. Across from her, Zion sat cross-legged in the grass, eyes closed. Her breathing was unnervingly slow. The grass around her didn't sway. "Show me what you've been hiding," he said quietly. Back at the dojo, Marcus sat on the floor, chest heaving. Zora stood over him, unmoved. The silence between them was intense. It was final. Zora said nothing. She lifted her hands. The room held its breath. She moved, faster than any kata, a blur of control, restraint, and intention. Marcus blocked, but barely, each strike calculated. Not for power but precision. He stepped back, shaking. "Where did you learn that?" "Where your belt comes from," Zora said. "Not with rules, just one lesson, end or be ended." He staggered. "Kale taught your father. He taught others. He taught us. Not in this building." Marcus felt the world tilt. Maybe more, he hadn't taught them. Now he'll start forgetting who he is. They had returned. The dojo felt colder than usual, and silence taught them to kill. Zora's eyes remained still, never darting. Each move was rehearsed, but not robotic. Like she'd lived it before, the last page was torn. Behind it, tucked between the spine, was a photo. In the hallway, the honor wall flickered under dim light. Outside, clouds swirled above the mountains. Not a leaf moved. "Marcus, Zora, what is this? Where did you really come from?" "Zora, from where black belts go when they forget the pain behind the color." "Marcus, Kale taught my father balance, discipline." "Zora, Kale taught truth. Your father diluted it. You buried it. Marcus, and you brought it back." "Zora, we never left. We waited." Camille on phone, trembling, you confronted her. "Are you insane?" "Marcus, I had to know. They're not just students. They're Kale's legacy." "Camille, you don't know what you've stirred. Those girls weren't just abandoned. They were hidden." "Marcus, why didn't you tell me?" "Camille, because what they remember is not just training. It's survival. They were raised in silence." "Marcus." Zion to Camille. He saw Zora. "Camille, that's not how memory works." Zion. "For us, it is." Marcus shut the dojo early that night. Locked every door, turned off every light. In his office, he pulled down his father's final training journal, Kale, and to little girls, not students, family. On the back, in faded ink, "Blood isn't loyalty. Pain is." As he lowered the photo, he heard the faint sound of synchronized breathing from the hallway. But he was alone. The dojo had stood in East Hills for 3 generations. Marcus had inherited it from his father, who inherited it from a man called Shihan Kale, an immigrant from Okinawa with a philosophy as sharp as the swords he never displayed. The black belts that lined the honor wall bore names, dates, and secrets. Marcus had never questioned the gaps. Always early, always last to leave. Flipping through the 1996 ledger, a name jumped out. Until now, Camille hadn't returned his calls in days. She was keeping her distance and the girls, but Zora and Zion still came to class. What he found was scattered mentions of underground tournaments, unsanctioned full-contact bouts, and a final match that ended in silence. No ref, no audience, just a rumor that one of the fighters never got up again. Marcus began digging. He pulled down the archived registry books from the dojo's back closet. Dust clung to the bindings. Kel's own son had been expelled. No further notes. One, unmistakably a young Malcolm, the other Zion, but older, hardened, expression unreadable. Kale S., expelled, reason, non-compliance with moral code. A silence stretched between them. Marcus frowned. Marcus blocked, but barely. Each strike calculated, not for power but precision. The kind that whispers, "I could have broken you, but I chose not to." He followed the trail online, with a patch that none of Marcus's students had ever worn. And a photo. To boys, he stared at the photo for hours, trying to understand. Not with rules, just one lesson, end or be ended. That night, the dojo's door was left unlocked again. In the morning, a fresh black belt hung in the locker room, not new, old, frayed, a spiral of eyes. The air held a tension, as if the walls themselves knew something had shifted. Rain threatened but never fell. Camille stood on her porch, arms crossed, heart pounding. Across from her, Zion sat cross-legged in the grass, eyes closed. Her breathing was unnervingly slow. The grass around her didn't sway. The mirrors reflected ghost images, blurs where Zora had just been, smudges where Marcus's feet dragged after each blocked strike. Camille watched from her window as Zora walked alone to the dojo the next day. Zion had stayed behind. She had grown quiet lately. Still, Camille let her go. Zora stood over him, unmoved. The silence between them wasn't tense. It was final. There was no stopping Zora when she had made a decision, but something in her stomach turned. The names engraved into the wooden plaques seemed to shimmer. One, newly added, bore no name, just the spiral symbol. Inside the dojo, Marcus waited. Not as a teacher, but as something else. Zora could feel it. She stepped onto the mat without bowing. "Show me what you've been hiding," he said quietly. Zora said nothing. She lifted her hands. The room held its breath. She moved, faster than any kata. A blur of control, restraint, and intention. He stepped back, shaking. "Where did you learn that?" "Where your belt comes from," Zora said. He staggered. "Kale taught your father. He taught others. He taught us. Not in this building." Marcus felt the world tilt. He hadn't taught them. They had returned. The dojo felt colder than usual. Zora's eyes remained still, never darting. Each move was rehearsed, but not robotic, like she'd lived it before. In the hallway, the honor wall flickered under dim light. Outside, clouds swirled above the mountains. Not a leaf moved. Back at the dojo, Marcus sat on the floor, chest heaving. "Marcus, Zora, what is this? Where did you really come from?" "Zora, from where black belts go when they forget the pain behind the color." "Marcus, Kale taught my father balance, discipline." "Zora, Kale taught truth. Your father diluted it. You buried it. Marcus, and you brought it back." "Zora, we never left. We waited." Camille on phone, trembling. You confronted her. "Are you insane?" "Marcus, I had to know. They're not just students. They single quotes read ... Kel's legacy. Maybe more, Camille. You don't know what you've stirred. Those girls weren't just abandoned. They were hidden." "Marcus, why didn't you tell me?" "Camille, because what they remember is not just training. It's survival. They were raised in silence, Marcus. And silence taught them to kill." Zion to Camille. He saw Zora. "Now he'll start forgetting who he is." Camille, "That's not how memory works." Zion, "For us, it is." And the girl's calm, calculated presence unnerved him. He needed answers beyond the dojo. Marcus hadn't slept since the bamboo room. The spiral on the honor wall didn't just appear, it was a message. She had once mentioned the twins were foster kids, placed quietly into Camille's care after a placement error. Marcus knew that was code for red tape and missing paperwork. But now he needed the whole file, so he called in a favor. The school counselor, Ms. Renee Holloway, was the only adult Zora and Zion seemed to tolerate. Renee agreed to meet off school grounds. Inside were the bodies of their mother, a man listed as stepfather, and a social worker, all three killed execution style. Close range, minimal struggle, no signs of forced entry. The report noted that the house was locked from the inside. They sat at a rundown diner just outside East Hills. Rain drizzled down the windows. Renee slid a folder across the table. I shouldn't be showing you this, mid-30s. Worked under aliases, no confirmed identity on the man. The social worker had gone to investigate an anonymous call. Marcus opened it, his hands already shaking. The coffee table still held a warm cup of tea, blanketed. Renee watched him carefully, her face unreadable. Marcus flinched. Something about their silhouettes reminded him of Zora and Zion, the symmetry, the shared silence. Small bowls of dry cereal nearby, tiny fingerprints on the wooden hatch. The twin girls had been in there for hours, possibly days. Case No. 874 KZ, quiet home. Short-term only. Emergency placement. Twin siblings. Date: September 12, 2017. A single blood trail led from the kitchen to the stairs. No signs of valuables taken. No open windows. Just silence and death. Each photograph had a timestamp, but none had faces. Marcus read faster. Not to me. The girls were found in a house in Georgia. A quiet, rural property miles from the nearest neighbor. Zora and Zion were discovered hiding in a crawl space, uninjured, not a scratch. Marcus looked up, stunned. They didn't speak for 2 months after that, Renee said. Not a word, not to police, not to doctors. Who were the adults? Marcus asked. The mother was Sadie Noble. He stared at a crime scene photo. The living room floor was painted in blood, but no signs of struggle. They were raised by killers, Marcus said. Or they were raised to survive them, Renee replied. But off the record, the sheriff said the scene felt staged, to clean. Like the girls had been prepared. The file folder lay open between them, its pages warped from water damage or something more sinister. The house was draped in beige walls and plastic-covered furniture. One image showed the crawl space. Back in the diner, the overhead fan spun too slowly. Marcus's coffee had gone cold, untouched. Outside, 2 teenage girls walked by, laughing under one umbrella. He thought about Camille's home, how calm the girls always were, how little they spoke, how much they watched. Marcus, how did they end up with Camille? Renee, Camille used to do emergency foster relief before the divorce. The department called her as a last resort, said the girls needed to be placed together. Marcus, but she kept them. Renee, they bonded? In their way, but I think Camille knew. She was protecting them from more than the system. Marcus, did anyone suspect them? Renee, officially, no. Marcus, prepared. Renee, like someone told them exactly what to do, where to hide. When not to move. Marcus, you think they saw it happen? Renee, I think they did more than see it. Camille had always played the part of the calm guardian. She was warm but firm, quiet but fiercely protective. When the state placed Zora and Zion in her care, no one asked questions. She didn't offer answers. The girls were alive and uninjured. That was enough, until now. Marcus's voice echoed in her head. They weren't just hidden, they were trained. And now they're returning to something we never understood. Camille had known that day would come. But she had hoped it would be long after she was gone. She had deleted the text 3 times before finally hitting send. She sat on the edge of her bed, the phone trembling in her hand. Meet me. I can't hold this anymore. The meeting with Marcus was brief. She didn't have the words, not all of them. They said if I asked questions, they disappeared too. Not the girls, me. Just fragments, they made me sign things, Marcus. When I took the girls, no name, no address. Just a spiral, drawn in fading ink. She showed him a sealed envelope. Her car still in the driveway. No sign of struggle. Just a faint spiral drawn in the condensation of the bathroom mirror. This came 3 days before their mother died. The wind didn't rustle the trees. Even the dogs along the block were silent. She didn't wrap it around herself. She let it flutter in the breeze. Marcus took the envelope but didn't open it. But a single window Marcus's office had its blinds tilted just enough to see a flicker of motion. "Who are they?" he asked. It hadn't been drawn by a finger. It was etched into the fog. Camille looked over her shoulder before whispering, "Those who teach beyond the mats. The ones who taught Kale. She never made it home." The next morning, her house was empty, her phone dead. Zora found it first, and when she did, she didn't cry. She looked at Zion. It started. Zion nodded. "And we're not students anymore." Camille's chair was still pulled out, her coffee cup full but cold. A newspaper lay open to the obituaries. The house was too quiet. Morning light seeped through the curtains, casting long shadows across the untouched breakfast table. Upstairs, the bathroom mirror was fogged despite no one having showered. The spiral in the center was perfect, unmistakable. Outside, birds did not sing. In the distance, the dojo stood still, unmoving. Zora stood on the front porch, holding Camille's scarf. Zion stood beside her, fists clenched. There were no tears, only purpose. "Marcus, she knew more than she told me. That envelope ... It's not just a warning. It's a summons. Zora, she was trying to protect us. But she forgot what happens to protectors. Zion, they get replaced. Marcus, I should have pushed her sooner. Asked about the girl's mother. The reports were vague. Triple homicide. No witnesses. But Camille ... She knew. Zora, she wasn't just our aunt. She was our shield. And now she's gone? Zion. So, we become the blade. Marcus, Zion, what are you planning? Zion. Nothing you can stop. Marcus, they'll come for you too. Whoever did this, Zora, let them, we've stopped hiding." The nightmares began without warning. Zora, once silent even in rest, now whispered names most unfamiliar, but a few chillingly recognizable. Marcus stood outside her room late one night, straining to hear. Her car was found parked outside the East train station. Sometimes possession rituals, if you're inclined to the occult. No sightings. No calls. Nothing since her cryptic warning. The girls didn't ask where she'd gone. They already knew. The words weren't English. Okinawan, perhaps, and always the same phrase, repeated at the end. Shisai Washington Yami no Naka Niiru. When Marcus finally looked through them, the pages were covered in symbols, ciphers, equations, and unsettling sketches of eyes, hands, spirals, fire. The lights flickered even when rewired. A low hum, like chanting beneath breath, echoed faintly in the vents. Some were poetry, some were mathematical equations. Some were just the same word over and over. Kaikena, dangerous. Always watching, but under her mattress, Marcus found knives. Small, balanced, sharpened to a shine, as if their pupils remembered things their mouths wouldn't say. The master is in the dark. Camille's absence weighed on the household like a phantom limb. Zion spent hours each day scribbling into spiral-bound notebooks. One image appeared repeatedly, 2 girls standing on opposite sides of a dojo, and a third shadow in the background, faceless, tall, watching. He took the pages to an old psychology professor he trusted. "Looks like a form of auto-writing," the professor said. "Used in trauma therapy, sometimes dissociative states." Marcus wasn't, but doubt crept in. Were Zora and Zion fractured by what they had seen, nor were they manipulating the silence around them with surgical precision? And then, one morning, Marcus woke to find every mirror in the dojo turned backward. No note, no noise, just reflections denied. The air inside the dojo had shifted again, thicker, colder, almost metallic. Zora's room looked untouched, but was now filled with post-it notes, all written in looping red ink, rehearsing. The question ain't what's wrong with them. It's what did they survive. Zion's room was the opposite, clean, sterile, surgical. The walls bare, the bed tightly made. The girls no longer walked through the dojo. They floated through it, never rushed, never still. Their eyes were deeper somehow. In the hours after the mirror shattered, the dojo became quiet, like a held breath. Zora had collapsed. Zion refused to speak. And still, the spiral remained, no longer carved, but painted in thick red strokes on the floor. The honor wall had been stripped clean. In its place was the spiral, carved deeper now, still warm to the touch. Marcus, Zora's sleep-talking. It's not just dreams, is it? Zion, you think she's speaking to herself. She's not. Marcus, then who? Zion, not who. Where? Marcus, where? Zion, to the room that remembers, to the ice, to the spiral. Marcus, what does the spiral want? Zion, quietly for us to finish what was started. Marcus to his old professor. You said possession. That's ridiculous. Right, professor. You're asking the wrong question. Marcus, they act like they know more than they say. Like they single quotes read ... professor. Or remembering. Some trauma is like ice buried deep, until something sharp breaks the surface. Then everything cracks. The spiral had a pulse now. At least that's how Marcus described it. He tried calling Camille again, straight to voicemail. The next day, Zora woke up screaming. Memories clawed back. Not in order. Not clearly. Fragments, a woman's voice calling them angels, blood soaked into carpet, someone's breath on her neck, the glint of steel in the dark. Flashbacks came fast, hard, like a dam breaking. She turned to him, eyes flat, and said, "You shouldn't have let us stay here." Zion stood by the window when Marcus came to check on her. Then the notebooks changed. Now they didn't just contain symbols or codes. Now they held full accounts, written in alternating voices. Zora's memories, Zion's recollections. And buried between them, truth, their real mother. A gentle woman, but tired, always tired. She had trusted a man she shouldn't have, a man who said he could fix things. It began with their mother. The man moved in. Then the rules changed, just once. Zion had seen more. Zora had heard him hit their mother once. The social worker came, months later, too late. And on the night she came with the final paperwork, something in the house snapped. Not someone. Something. Zora remembered holding Zion's hand, walking down the stairs barefoot. 3 bodies. 1 knife, blood pooled by the broken fireplace. She looked down. Her hands were clean. Zion's weren't. But neither girl cried. They just sat on the couch and waited. Silent, that's how the police found them. Eyes open, unblinking, the flashbacks painted the house in layers. The yellow glow of the hallway lamp, the creak of the 3rd stair from the bottom, the smell of cheap wine and antiseptic. A shattered vase, a knocked-over photo of their mother, the sound of the social worker's heels clicking nervously before the screaming started. A woman's mouth open in a scream she never finished. Memory protects us until it doesn't. Blood on the kitchen tile. Not splattered, but smeared, like someone had tried to drag a body and gave up halfway. Zion's eyes watching from behind the banister, a man's body crumpled face down. Zora, shaking, reaching out to touch the social worker's hand, still warm. The front door wide open, snow drifting in. Marcus, why didn't you tell me this before? Zora, we didn't remember until the mirror broke. To detectives. Flashing badges, no smiles. The dojo was no longer a sanctuary. It was now evidence. Marcus, that makes no sense. But the detectives weren't interested in theories. They wanted facts, they wanted confessions. Either way, they came with questions about Camille. About the girls, about the night the spiral appeared. Zion, trauma doesn't make sense. Marcus, then what's the truth? Zora, Whispers, one of us did it. Marcus, which one? Zion, does it matter? We both stayed quiet? We both chose silence. Zora to Zion, I saw you with the knife. I saw you. Zion, you think it was me. You always did. But you're wrong. Zora, then who? Zion, pauses, not who. What we became. It started with a knock Marcus would never forget. Heavy, deliberate, almost slow enough to be cruel. Someone had leaked the reopened file. Or maybe someone never stopped watching. Marcus kept his voice calm, his eyes tired. He repeated what he knew, what he didn't, and what he feared. He didn't have either. Zora and Zion were separated, interviewed alone. And that's when the real fracture began. Their stories no longer aligned. Zora claimed Zion had the knife. Zion said Zora had the plan. She told me to wait in the kitchen. I heard everything. Zion whispered. She followed him. I tried to stop her. Zora insisted. Back and forth, each truth canceling the other. Camille's name came up again and again, but she was still gone, missing, unreachable. The smell of ammonia clung to the mats, but beneath it lingered the faint scent of copper, old blood, memory, dread. And the spiral, now scrubbed off the dojo floor, had been photographed. Its angles analyzed. Looks ritualistic. One detective said. Marcus started sleeping in the dojo. Lights on. Door locked. He didn't trust the mirrors anymore. Zoomed in. Digitally reconstructed. From above, it looked like an eye, a watching eye. I think she knew one of them did it. Maybe both. He didn't trust what the girls had become. Crime scene tape fluttered in the dojo's doorway like a mocking flag. Just that she didn't sleep at night anymore. And that someone kept calling, whispering. Photos had been taken of the spiral. Zora sat in the back office, legs curled, arms folded. The light overhead buzzed like a distant wasp. She wore Camille's bracelet now. No one knew where she'd found it. Her reflection in the dark window showed only her outline, no detail. As if she'd begun to disappear. Why didn't you call for help? The cold cut sharper than usual, biting through his coat and straight into the marrow of his nerves. Something was off. He sensed it before he unlocked the front door. Zion faced the detectives with calm rage, her fingers drumming patterns on the table. Outside, snow began to fall again. Silent, still, her belt was laid out like a line between them. Inside, silence was a weapon. Detective Harrow, your aunt told someone the girls saw something. Maybe more. Did she ever mention who threatened her? Marcus? No, but she was scared. Detective Harrow, did she say which? She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was offering a deal. Marcus? No. How Camille had tried to run. How Zora had convinced her to stay quiet. Or else. How Zion had watched her sister slit their stepfather's throat while humming an old lullaby. Detective to Zora, you said you tried to stop her. Hid the blooded clothes. I did what she couldn't do alone. Zora, because she looked like me. And I didn't want her to go away. Detective, you mean Zion. Zora, no, I mean the other me. The one who doesn't cry, the one who picks up knives. Detective to Zion, Zora said you had the knife. Zion, of course she did. That's her game. She plants seeds. She waters them with silence. Detective, are you saying she framed you? Zion, smiles faintly. I'm saying she needed me to carry what she couldn't. So I did. Until now. Marcus returned to the dojo that night, long after the detectives had gone. Inside, the lights were already on. Zion stood barefoot on the mat. Close the door, she said. He did, and then she locked it. There was no hesitation, no build-up. Just the quiet, deadly certainty of someone who had waited for this moment. I need to tell you everything, she whispered. Before she does, Marcus opened his mouth to speak, but she raised her hand. You won't believe both of us, so believe me. She told him about the night of the murders. Their mother had screamed. The social worker had tried to call for help. But the phone never connected. Zion had unplugged the router minutes before. She said if I loved her, I'd help, Zion said. So I wiped the knife. Tears clung to the corners of her eyes, but never fell. She's going to pin it all on me. She's always been better at stories. You know that. A sound echoed behind them, the back door clicking open. Zora. She walked in slowly, her reflection stretching across the dojo floor. You always talk too much, Zora said. Marcus stepped between them. Enough? Zion didn't flinch. You said the dojo was about control, self-discipline, mastering the parts of you that want to destroy. Zora stepped closer. Then let's see who's mastered what. The dojo, under the harsh ceiling lights, felt like a stage. The mats were cold, the air heavy with the memory of sweat and blood. The spiral, now erased, seemed to linger in spirit. Zion tightened her fists, breathing slow, steady. Zora's belt was no longer around her waist. She held it in one hand like a weapon, the fabric trailing behind her like a whip. Snow pelted the windows in silence. Outside, the world had stopped. Inside, time collapsed. Marcus stood at the edge of the mat, torn between mentor and witness. The twins circled. Zion struck first, not with fists, but with words. You don't remember what he did to her. It missed. She turned, eyes dark, no hesitation. Tuss, but I do. That's why I didn't stop you. That's why I helped. Zora lunged, the belt swinging. A cry broke the air. A shoulder collided with ribs, a leg swept out. A body fell. Silence again. You're just mad I didn't let you do it first. Blood on the mat. Just one belt left behind. He never exploits the girls, never gives into fear, and continues seeking truth, not vengeance. His refusal to abandon Zora and Zion, even when they become dangerous, is the story's emotional core. Marcus, Zora, stop. You don't have to do this. Her decision to speak, confess, and even confront her sister is an act of inner courage. It's not heroic in the traditional sense, but in the context of trauma and manipulation, it's monumental. Zora, you think she's telling the truth. She's always been the weaker one, but you believed her. The spiral, the lies, the dual identities, all unravel toward revelation. Even if justice is ambiguous or absent, truth remains the story's only light source, painful, flickering, but always present. Zion, because I am the weaker one, and I'm done being used. Zora, I did it to protect us. Marcus, both of you, this isn't justice, this is pain. It's where Marcus tried to bring peace to chaos. It's where Zion finally told the truth. That space, once sacred, becomes a battlefield, but also a place of confrontation and change. Zion, no, Marcus, this is the truth finally cutting through. Zora, you taught us to fight. You never asked what for. Zion, you taught us to break silence. So I did. Marcus, you're still children. Zora, we stopped being that the day she bled out in front of us, despite the violence, manipulation, and emotional weight. Marcus, the dojo instructor, remains the story's moral anchor. You taught us to fight. You never asked what for. He gave them tools for self-control and discipline, the only thing they had when their world collapsed. Zion, the more passive twin, becomes a light in the story by finally choosing truth over loyalty. You taught us to break silence. So I did. That act of defiance, choosing reality over shared delusion, is a glimmer of healing, even if it comes at a terrible cost. Throughout the narrative, truth is dangerous, but it is also the only path to freedom. Though tainted by violence in the end, the dojo symbolizes what could have been: structure, safety, mastery of self.